Right, welcome. We're live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you for tuning in. You, of course, are watching The Week Ahead with myself, Liezle Wilson. Let's get into your headlines before we take a look at your top stories on The Week Ahead. Our Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Thembi Siweya, has urged South Africans to continue supporting radio as it remains one of the most powerful media platforms. In other news, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases says the coronavirus test positivity rate is 7.6% in the latest 24-hour reporting period. And further afield, the US postpones decision on Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine for children 6 months through to 4 years of age for at least 2 months. Right, of course, those will look at your headlines, your top story at this hour. We've seen today marks World Radio Day and has been celebrated for remaining the most widely consumed and trusted medium worldwide. World Radio Day was launched back in 2011 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Now, studies show that many people ascribe to greater confidence to radio than any other media platform. Well, SABC radio station and biggest Afrikaans station in the country, RSG, also celebrates its 85th birthday this year.
It's so wonderful to celebrate radio in its many forms and diversity in South Africa with Radio Day. The reason why radio is so successful, people ask that question often, and the answer is always quite simple. It is an intimate relationship that you have with a voice. And that voice is talking to one single person. I'm talking to one person out there. And that is the way that person makes a connection to you. They listen to you every single day at a specific time. They know it's live. That person, it's most of the time it's live. We're in studio. We're talking to you live and direct about issues that affect your life. You know, you can tune in on the hour, every hour for news to know what's going on in the world. You know what time of the week you can tune into the health show, to the news programs. You get informed immediately. And then, of course, you can go everywhere with it. Radio is so accessible. You can have it in your car and drive, take a long trip and listen to the radio. You don't have to make use of a screen, for example, and have to put time aside to enjoy television. We love, but radio you can take with you anywhere. And then lastly, I think it's very accessible because it's not expensive. You can tune in for free.
Well, the SABC's Group Executive for Radio, Nada Wachela, has also weighed in on this.
Radio, I believe, is economically viable, even though the economy is shrinking. I mean, the industry as a whole, it felt, the effects of the COVID pandemic because marketing budgets were cut, as most of our clients' businesses were shrinking and some were even folding. So marketing budgets, have been spread quite thin and advertisers have really had to consider their advertising spend and marketing. But overall, SABC carries massive audiences that any advertiser, would like to associate with. So we become viable still economically, especially in the South African setting, because the public broadcaster is self-funding. 80% of our revenue, is coming from advertising. So we have to we have to constantly devise strategies to attract advertisers. We have to demonstrate that the audiences that we are carrying, there is a belief that the audiences that we are carrying are not quality audiences. Some still believe that they are largely rural. There's huge audiences that our vernacular radio stations, more especially, are carrying, are largely rural and they don't have the buying power. But we have been demonstrating, at trade marketing events and the presentations that we bring to our clients. We have invested in research, actually, that we can bring to our clients and say that the audiences that we carry as the SABC, are economically viable. And that has assisted us to attract revenue. But it is a constant struggle because there's a lot of competition in the market. And like I said, the marketing budgets are shrinking in a very tough economy.
Well, the SABC's 3 Limpopo-based radio stations ran a simulcast program between 11 and midday today to celebrate World Radio Day. Now, the show, which is being aired on Tobela FM, Mungana Lonene FM and Palabala FM, was of course held at the University of Venda in Thohoyandou. It's to impart broadcast knowledge to the university's third-year media studies students. Our reporter, Pimani Baloy, has more.
Today it's World Radio Day, and as people who are tasked with being the custodian of the medium that we want to survive for centuries to come. I mean, radio has been around for over a century now. We felt we need to come to the University of Venda and sort of give back to the student a bit of knowledge on the industry, preparing them to be the broadcasters of tomorrow. Hence today we brought the big guns in terms of the presenters that appeal to youth in Matilda Chauke, Wills D from Tobela FM, as well as Terry the Bidut from Palapala FM, to interact with their peers, not only by seeing them in action, but also being able to exchange opinions and ideas about radio moving forward.
Mr. Magubane, these 3 radio stations broadcast in 3 different languages. What can a listener, one of these 5 million listeners that you say listen to this radio station, expect from this broadcast today? It's
one of our ways to demonstrate the might that SABC is, being able to bring all these languages. They say if you want to speak to the person's heart, you must speak to them in their language. That was Nelson Mandela. And we want to prove that the power of public broadcast radio service in being able to portray the message to our listeners is what we are trying to do today, and demonstrate it using the youthful presenters and commemorating this Radio Day.
And part of this program includes some third-year students from the University of Venda. Take us through about the significance of doing this.
Well, when they finish here next year, they would be wanting to intern in various organizations, including the SABC. It's a way of showing them that to put the first step forward in trying to find a job. These are the things you'll need, and this is what we do behind the scenes, just to prepare them better for employment in South Africa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Magubane. Speaking about students, Blaine, I'm going to bring in 2 of the students so they talk to us about how they feel about being part of this. We have Muchizi with us. Muchizi, you're a third-year student here. What are your career hopes, and how is this day helping you move forward towards that?
I mean, I'm so grateful to be here today because I think it gives us opportunity, and it will give us the hint on what's happening on presenting and radio. So I'm very much grateful to be part of World Radio Day at the University of Venda.
Thank you so much, Muchiz. I'm going to bring in another student, a student from Univen as well. Azwi, please come closer. Azwi, you are also here. You're part of the selected students who had to view this. How do you feel about being part of World Radio Day 2022 at the University of Venda?
Well, I feel good. I feel honored, actually. I think this is somewhat a lifetime opportunity, once in a lifetime, because I'm a third-year student and the next year I'll be leaving, so I wouldn't get to, be part of this anymore.
Do you see yourself working in radio? Are you inspired?
Well, yes, I am. I see myself, actually. Yeah.
And you've met these people that you hear on radio like every day of your life. How does it feel?
Well, it feels good. I feel really honored. Like I don't know. I feel also inspired seeing them just sitting there, just be looking at them, and I'll be feeling like, I want to be there too.
Right now, the special 350 Rand COVID-19 social relief of distress grant has been extended for the next 12 months from April 2022 to March 2023, as of course announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa during the State of the Nation address. Well, advocacy group Black Sash has welcomed the extension of government's social relief of distress grant, saying it will continue to cushion those hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps to explain this further, we are now joined by SASSA National Spokesperson Paseka Letsatsi. Paseka, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC today.
Good afternoon, Liezle, and thanks for having us.
Right. Paseka, perhaps to start off this conversation, in a general sense, who are the recipients of these grants? And perhaps, as we also understand, Section 27(1)(c) of the SA Constitution, guarantees that everyone has the right to have access to social security. So what are some of the conditions that have contributed to this extension? And can South Africa afford the spending as we speak?
No. Thanks for that question, Liz. And I think basically it's South Africans who do not have anything to fend for themselves. And I think the Department of Social Development, as the mother department who drives policy, would then give the South African Social Security Agency the instruction to make sure that we implement the distribution of the 350. Yes, there are engagements between the department, SASSA, and the civil society movement to make sure that we come to a particular conclusion or an understanding in terms of making sure that the heavy burden or the problems which were imposed upon people by the COVID. You would understand that when we were hit by COVID, people did not work. Some of them were retrenched and so on. And I think the intention here was to make sure that people have something to make sure they are able to get to get something for them to be able to buy food and so forth. So these are the people, the category of people which is having access to the 350.
All right. So with that said, Pasek, perhaps you could also explain, what beneficiaries should do now. Would they have to reapply? Does this extension only apply to those who are already in the system, or will new applicants be included? Walk us through that.
Look, Liezle, I think because the president made an announcement during the SONA, the process, therefore, would be that the Minister of Social Development would have to make the regulations to regularize the implementation of the extension. And we think the minister would do this before the end of March. Because remember, in terms of the current arrangement, it's supposed to come to an end by the end of March. But obviously, the minister would then have to come in to make sure that the processes are in place for people to be able to get a 350. So from where we are basically paying, but we'll definitely wait for those particular regulations to be enacted by the minister so that we understand certain processes which we need to follow. So we are definitely an organization waiting for the minister to make sure that the regulations are adopted, and we are then giving the instruction in terms of how and when and who should we choose in terms of making sure that we implement the distribution of 350.
All right, thank you for that clarity, perhaps. So then as we await those regulations, I wonder if we could look at the track record to date, and perhaps you can divulge on the information regarding how many individuals you were able to assist through the grants so far, and perhaps what impact has social grants had on poverty alleviation in South Africa to date?
Yeah, you see, we have about more than 10.5 million people that we are distributing the 352. Some of them were rejected because of one reason or the other, and about 3 million of them. But obviously, when the system rejects you, because sometimes you might be having an ID which is wrong, which does not match to your name, but sometimes people we might pick up from the UIF that they are actually getting something, and others might be getting benefit from NSFAS. And what is good about the system, Liezle, is that it has helped us as an organization to interact with other government entities. But people have the right to appeal, and once you appeal, you will then be able to go through the processes to make sure that if we think that you qualify, you can qualify. And the number, we are sitting at about 3 million of them. So it is a sizable number of people who made the application, but it has helped us a lot because we now understand that people do not necessarily have to come to our office to make an application. They can do certain things online because the intention is also to avoid the spread of the COVID-19. But there is technology. We need to make sure that we use the advantage of the technology which is available to us to make sure that we do things speedily, easily, and without inconveniencing people.
So speaking about those strides that have been taken, perhaps also how you've been able to work, alongside or interlink with other departments in the system, I wonder what some of the challenges were, some of the gaps or weaknesses in the system that you've experienced to date. I mean, these were unprecedented times. So obviously there must have been constraints that were faced either physically on a digital, way, or even financial infrastructure. I mean, walk us through what those weaknesses and gaps have also looked like and how you aim to mitigate against some of those challenges, perhaps for this next cycle.
I think one of the biggest problems we faced at the beginning was that which we had to do a vigorous education campaign, is the fact that we have a big number of people who did not give us their bank account details. And in some instances, a person would have a bank account, but they would not want to give it to us. And then it takes longer for us to be able to process the money to go to the post office. And in some instances, people would want to flock to the post office to go and ask if their money has been deposited. And what we've been trying to do is to interact with the communities and ask them, please do not go to the post office to make an inquiry. Even if your neighbor, for an example, tells you that I got my 350, we've been requesting beneficiaries that they must not go and make an inquiry, because in any case, it contributes, Liezle, to the snakes, which you might have seen at the post office where people are queuing and so on. So we have been requesting people wait for an SMS that comes from SASSA or post office to say, please come and get your money. But the process is on the second phase of dispersing this 350. We did not have that most of the problems, because at least we dispersed people were from NDA volunteers to go to the communities to help them in terms of making an application.
Paseka, I want to perhaps in conclusion take this conversation on a more macro level and just look at the issue or the idea of social grants in South Africa to date during our democratic dispensation. And, as you've alluded to, social grants are put in place to improve the standards of living and even redistribute wealth to help perhaps create more equity in society, given our inequality in the past. And perhaps how it's continued to date. And we've seen the millions of people that receive this monthly support in South Africa. I mean, other means and other grants such as pension, foster childcare grants, amongst others. But I wonder, with more people dependent on social grants, especially now with COVID-19 having exacerbated the issue, what worry does this pose for the country, with such high unemployment figures, etc.? How do we begin to tackle these systemic issues and create a more equitable society for South Africa?
Look, Liezle, I think you are pushing me to enter a policy space, and that belongs to the Department of Social Development. Okay. The mandate of SASSA is to administer the distribution of social grant after the policy directive from the department. However, we think that one of the strategic objectives of the organization is to make sure that you link social grant to economic opportunities. In this instance, we partner with Department of Small Business, we partner with labor and so forth, so that you don't necessarily have someone depending on a social grant in perpetuity. You would have people getting out of the social grant system so that they are able to get into the economic activities and so on. But like I said, I am extremely limited to enter in this space, because it's a space which basically belongs to the Department of Social Development.
Absolutely. Paseka, thank you for that clarity then. Perhaps let me push you further just on this last question, because you've spoken about how social welfare then can be, obviously is to assist the inequality, to fix the inequality rather in South Africa. But there's also risks. It has the potential to prevent people from participating in the mainstream market economy at large. And I just wonder, given what we have implemented to date, is it effective? What alternative models are we looking at this point, perhaps to integrate people back into the system so they actually do acquire skills and eventually empower themselves, particularly women and children?
No, you're quite right on that question, Liezle. But I think what is important is that we also have a relationship with NSFAS. To date, We have children who were dependent on social grant, went to university, benefited from NSFAS, and once they graduate, they are able to be absorbed into the economy. And I think some of them are able to do businesses for themselves and so on. We've got those particular stories. We do have people who basically used this money, which they have, especially of social grant, to open businesses for themselves. You'd have someone who has got a bakery, for an example, and employ 2 or 3 people, or you have co-ops who are able to do uniform for children and so on. And these are some of the people who are in the database because we cooperate a great deal with the National Development Agency, go to their database and basically check where we can be able to cooperate, look at the beneficiaries so that we do not have someone depending on a social grant forever, but they are able to interact and it stimulates the economic activity. Liezle, thanks.
All right, Paseka, I think that conversation does continue, perhaps as the Minister outlines the regulations and then the way forward. But thank you very much for your time today on the SABC. SASSA National Spokesperson Paseka Letsatsi, again, just chatting to us about, on the back of the announcement of President Cyril Ramaphosa at the State of the Nation address. Again, we heard the special 350 Rand COVID-19 social relief of distress grant has been extended for another 12 months. Well, we leave that conversation there and continue on the other side with more news and updates. You're watching The Week Ahead with myself, Liezle Wilson. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is The Week Ahead with myself, Liezle Wilson. Let's take a look at more news we can expect for the week ahead. Starting off with the Pietermaritzburg High Court expected to deliver judgment in former President Jacob Zuma's application for leave to appeal the dismissal of his special plea on the 16th of February. Our Judge Kun dismissed Zuma's special plea in October last year, in which the former president argued that State Prosecutor Advocate Billy Downer should not prosecute the corruption case because of his alleged bias and lack of impartiality. Moving on to other news, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases says the coronavirus test positivity rate is now at 7.6% in the last 24-hour reporting period. Now, this is still above the level at which the spread of the virus is considered to be under control. But Gauteng continues to record most of the new infections in the country. It's closely followed by the Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal province. The NICD says that in the latest 24-hour to 48-hour period, 9 people have succumbed to the virus. The overall death toll in South Africa now stands at 96,985. Well, saying of which, the U.S. decision on Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine for children 6 months through to 4 years of age has been postponed for at least 2 months. It comes after the Food and Drug Administration said it needed more data.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is postponing a decision on the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for children younger than 5 by at least 2 months. The FDA had planned to make a decision next week, with a possible rollout as soon as February 21st. But on Friday, the agency said it decided it needed more data before moving forward. Pfizer and BioNTech are seeking emergency use authorization to administer a lower-dose 3-shot regimen to kids aged 6 months to 4 years. The companies submitted data on the first 2 doses for this age group earlier this month at the request of the FDA. In December, the biotech firms said trial results of what was first intended to be a 2-dose vaccine fell short of expectations in 2 to 4-year-olds and amended its clinical trial to test a 3-dose version of the shot. The companies said they would continue the trial to dose all children with 3 shots and expected to have data in April.
Right, moving on to Zimbabwe. We obviously seen that with Zimbabwe's by-elections just a few weeks away, electioneering season has kicked off in earnest. The polls are to fill vacant positions in local government and the National Assembly, some roles which have been vacant since the pandemic started in 2020. Now, the ruling party, ZANU-PF, held a rally in Epworth, just south of Harare. It says that they are optimistic about these upcoming polls. And in news further afield now, U.S. President Joe Biden has warned his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin that the U.S. and its allies would respond decisively if Russia invaded the Ukraine. Now, the US, UK and Germany are amongst countries who've told their nationals to leave the Ukraine amid warnings from Western powers that an invasion by Russia could be imminent. Moscow has amassed an estimated 100,000 troops alongside Ukraine's border, but denies any intent to invade. And that's where we're going to leave it for you today. Once again, it has been an absolute pleasure. Now, from myself, Liezle Wilson, and the rest of the Week Ahead team, until next time, do take care. It's goodbye for now.